Welcome to our first in a series of orientation and mobility presentations. The first one today will be on O&M, winter preparedness, and pedestrian travel skills. I'm Meg Robertson, the Director of the Orientation and Mobility Department here at the Mass Commission for the Blind. Although I am presenting, this is a group effort gathered from information and experience from other certified orientation and mobility specialists in the field, including MCB O&M staff and our partners O&M community staff, the Carroll Center for the Blind, and of course, from individuals who are blind that we worked with providing orientation and mobility services. The title slide here has a photograph of a gentleman walking with a winter coat and a long cane on a snow-covered sidewalk. The road is on his right and the snowbank is on his left. This individual has not let winter weather impact his ability to get out. I hope that this presentation will help you learn or reinforce your travel skills so you can make informed decisions to travel during the next few winter months. And winter weather should not be the reason that you don't travel. The photograph in this slide is of a 12-foot snowbank of plowed snow on a pedestrian island in a city setting. Pedestrians are walking in the street around it, walking by cars that are in the street. Up until 1995, I had never really worked providing orientation and mobility in a snow environment. In the area that I taught, I provided O&M. Where I provided O&M, the snow never really stayed on the ground very long. We would get a snowstorm, and within a few days, much of the snow had melted, and it was a 1 to 2 day event. However, in 1995, that changed. The winter of 95 and 96 was our first 100 inches of snow in one season. And the first time snow was on the ground for the entire winter season through March. At that time, I got a lot of phone calls from seasoned cane travelers and guide dog users asking me how to travel in these conditions, because none of us had experienced it. I really didn't have a good answer. When I did the research, I found that there wasn't much, and there still isn't a lot, dependent on where you live and how you travel. But what I did find out was in the states and other countries that have much more snow than we do, and stays on the ground for the entire winter, it seems that they are better at sanding and clearing sidewalks than Massachusetts. I'm going to get back to that. But right now, I want to remind you of the most recent worst winter that we ever had was in 2014 and 2015, just to jog your memory a bit. We had a 6-week storm cycle. We had 108 inches of snow. We had a 30-day snowfall record. We had a snow depth record. We had the fastest 6-foot snowfall that ever occurred. We had the fastest 90-inch snowfall. And we had 4 calendar days of 12 or more inches of snow on the ground. In addition to that, we had 28 consecutive days of under 20 degrees. So it was pretty chilly that year as well. One of the things I did find was from our orientation and mobility techniques a guide for the practitioner book that I got when I was in college. And the quote was, if the general principles of orientation are well learned, travelers will be well prepared for dealing with the effects of adverse weather. So the first thing to learn is, if you have good basic orientation and mobility skills, you should be able to work and continue traveling during adverse weather. The first thing you need to do is be prepared. The photograph here is of a city bus at a bus stop with a clear sidewalk and a snowbank on the side between the sidewalk and the curb. You want to set up a transportation plan, and you want to have options for your transportation plans. One of those is using paratransit. In the winter of 2014-2015, paratransit was really the only transit option that worked well. The commuter rail, the subway system, all broke down and stopped working. And the buses, the big buses, had a lot more difficulty in getting around the city streets with all the snow. Paratransit worked well for a lot of people. Another thing for you to do as an option is talking to your family and friends and coworkers if you are commuting to work as backup options to get you to and from where you need to go. The other thing that you need to check for transit riders is your route going to change during a snow event? Some transit agencies change their bus routes, and you need to find out if you are on a snow route or a bus stop that will be changing. You need to develop different backup routes and practice them before the event occurs, especially a commuter route. If you are going in and out to work, try this route once a month or every other week or more than once, so you know the route when you need to use it. Traveling in snow, you want to be prepared for the unexpected, use common sense, dress for the weather, wear sunglasses if glare is a problem. You want to carry hand and toe warmers. You want to prepare for a longer commute. Your time distance will be different. It's going to take you longer to get from point A to point B. The route may be much more difficult than it's been in the past, depending on if snow is removed or what's going on at the time of the storm or after the storm. Understanding forecasts are very important. I know in New England we talk about the weather a lot, but we have to pay attention during storm to understand how that will affect our orientation and mobility traveling. The wind chill is very important to understand how that's going to impact you, and be aware that you will be waiting, and you may be waiting outside for a period of time. So dress extremely better than you normally would. Refreezing issues. The route may be okay in the morning, but icy in the afternoon. You want to learn about the types of snow. Is it soft and light? And if it is soft and light, which I like because I can shovel it very easily, if it's windy, there may be snow drifts. And you need to be aware if the snow is going to be moving around, because a clear sidewalk will get covered very quickly. Is it heavy or wet? How is that going to impact your traveling? Is it icy? What's the visibility? And this is not as much for you as it is for the drivers. So you know that they can see you. The photo here is of the Boston Public Gardens during a snowstorm. Everything's snow covered. The sidewalks have not been plowed, and the visibility is not that good. So you want to ask some questions before you go out. The first one is, do I really need to go out? to work or do an errand? Can it wait? Do I have somebody else who could do it with me? Whatever. Ask if you really need to go out at that period of time. What's the wind chill factor again? If you're waiting for transportation, time, there may be a delay, and it just takes longer for cars and buses to get through the snow. With COVID now, especially when the new changes are going on, we may have to wait to get into a store or do an appointment or whatnot. So you don't want to expect to get out of your bus and then walk right into an area. You need to dress for the weather. Can the trip wait later in the day? Is there an option for online ordering? Do you have friends and families that could do an errand for you if you needed one done, especially at the first beginning of a storm or right after a storm has occurred? What are the conditions of the sidewalks or streets? And this varies from either your community or if you're commuting into another community, they may be totally different. What's your neighborhood and your usual route? How is that cleared and maintained? Clothing is the next thing that you need to be aware of. You want to dress in layers. You want to have a water repellent outer layer. Ski pants are great for going out. I used to wear them when I was going to the T in the morning. I'd wear them standing at the T, and I was very comfortable and warm while waiting for the subway to come. Mittens and gloves. Mittens are warmer than gloves, and I wear usually gloves, and then I put a mitten over the glove. That keeps my hands warm. A hat to keep your head and your ears warm. A neck gaiter is great to be covering your neck and your ears. And if you're not wearing a hat because it was warmer and it gets colder, you can use the neck gaiter as a hat. You want to cover your mouth with a scarf or your neck gaiter to protect your lungs on extremely cold days. The woman in the picture here on the right, she has a bib that says blind skier. She's dressed very well for outdoor travel. We are going snowshoeing. So she's wearing snowshoes. She has a trekking pole. She's totally blind, but she wanted to be funny with me when I took the photograph. That she pulled her neck gaiter over her face and her hood over her face. So you can't see her face at all. But we were out for a number of hours and we were all quite comfortable because we dressed correctly. And it was probably about 20 degrees out that day. The other thing that you want to consider wearing is a bright colored coat, so you're more visible to drivers. And if you don't have a bright colored coat, getting bright colored mittens or gloves or a scarf or a hat. We run into this a bit when we work in the community, but this is more a school issue, is what about students who aren't prepared? This is more for the orientation and mobility specialists that are viewing this. On lessons, I used to bring extra clothing. Sometimes I have extra socks and mittens and gloves and hats. In schools, a lot of times you can go to the lost and found box, and there's a lot of different winter clothing left there by students. I know middle school students and high school students don't dress for the weather, and we always have to be sure that we have extra clothing. So when they're going on their orientation and mobility lesson, that they're dressed and they can't say, well, I forgot something. One of the things to get extra items are at dollar stores and in winter sales to pick up additional winter outerwear. Footwear is another big plus. This is a photograph of my winter boot. I'm wearing ski pants and a red jacket on a snow-packed sidewalk. So the first thing is to do is invest in a good pair of boots. You may need more than one pair for cold and snow and one for the wet season. Because the winter boots, I have to switch off in the spring because they're too hot to wear. They should be waterproofed. And you should have no heels on these boots or a very, very small heel. And traction soles, have good soles on the boots. Some people don't consider these fashionable. I do because I'm outside a lot. And inside your boot, you want to have a well-fitted sock. I usually wear double because my feet do get cold when I'm out for a long period of time. There's such a thing called yak tracks. And what those are a piece of equipment you put on your boot. And it's extremely great for icy or sidewalks or environments. The downside is you can't wear them indoors. So if you are going from walking a route to a subway station and then you have to go inside, you have to take them off because they can be very slippery on an inside surface. Some other items that you can purchase are called ice grips, ice treads, or ice cleats. Additional equipment, a backpack, trekking or ski poles, not to carry a purse or something in your other hand. A backpack puts things on your back and it helps with a little better balance. And it keeps one hand free. A trekking pole and a ski pole in addition to your long cane or your guide dog. You should have a cane. So if this happens a lot, I get a lot of phone is I lost it came off, and if it's a folding cane, it collapses. So you should carry an extra cane with you, either to use as a balance cane or to use in case your cane breaks. Things the Canadian Safety Council recommends is that walk like a penguin. And that is, you keep your knees loose, you extend arms wide on you for balance, and again, adapting with or a guide dog. You want to point your feet slightly out, toes out, pointing out. And you need to explore any kind of winter environment. Climbing over snowbanks, you want to turn sideways and walk up sideways to maintain your balance. Again, using as for balance and then use your long cane to sideways down the snow. Cane. There's a photo of a woman with her long cane. Sidewalk. Constant contact sometimes works better than touch. For snow over 3 inches deep, a two cane technique may be used. I've never used this before, but it is using one cane with constant contact, and the second cane you're using as a probe. And that second cane should have a pencil tip. And if you don't have a second cane, again, you can use a hiking or a ski pole. And this is from our Journal of Vision Impairment and Blindness. Additional canes and tips. You may want to use a shorter cane, which is similar to, looks like a support cane. And that you can place an ice grip at the bottom of that. For your long canes, you may need an indoor cane and an outdoor cane. So you may need to change the tip. Sometimes the pencil tips work better than the marshmallow roller tips or the ball tips. There's such a thing called a Dakota disc, which was invented in Dakota, North Dakota. And that is a disc tip that's about 6 inches wide that is used in deep snow. It can't be, well, it can be used indoors, but it's a very thin plastic and it will wear down. So you really want to switch your cane tips if you are doing indoor and outdoor travel. Again, using a hiking or a ski pole to offer additional balance for you will be helpful. One thing in regards to holding a cane or your guide dog harness is that some people like to have their hand touching the cane and not having a glove on it for more feedback. You can make your own cane mitten or sock. You just cut up a wool sock at the top and put your cane top through the sock, and then you can hold the cane inside with the sock in your hand. There's such a thing now called, it's a pickleball mitt or a tennis mitt for people who play a sport outdoors in the winter to hold their paddle. And that is pretty much the same thing. You can just purchase it and it can keep your hand warm and keep while holding your cane. Guide dog issues for the snow. There's a woman here, the photograph is a woman with her guide dog and she's wearing a red jacket on a snow-covered sidewalk. Again, one of the things you need to be aware of is the wind chill factor for you and the dog and how it might affect the dog. The type of snow for your dog, how he or she travels in the snow, and if it's a sticky snow or it's an icy snow that could affect the dog's paws. Type of snow ice melt used. Sodium chloride based and rock salt is not good for dogs or vegetation. A better choice is calcium chloride, which is, if you look at the ingredients that you do get your rock salt from or your ice melt from, it's CaC12. You need to check with your community and find out what is their ice melt used, either with your apartment complexes or areas that you do travel with your guide dog. You should check into that. Clothing, again, is bright and reflective clothing for you and your dog. And guide dog schools do have something for a harness mitt that will fit with the harness. You want to have protection for the dog's paws. There's such a thing called Musher's Secret. If you go into Google sled dogs, they have a lot of resources for dogs who are outside a long periods of time that will help their paws. And also some people do use dog booties. Again, they should be water repellent, and you need to practice with the dog before the time that you really need it and see how the dog reacts to the booties. Some dogs like them, some dogs don't. If you do use dog booties, bring extra because many times the dog will lose one or two on its route. One thing to be aware is the conditions may change. There may be melting or refreezing again, as I talked about earlier. Knowing which side you're traveling, on the north side of the street or the south side, and how the sun impacts those sidewalks. It may vary, your route may vary from house to house. It may be clear, and then at the next house, they did not do any snow removal. This photograph on the left has a clear sidewalk, but further up, there are benefits of snow, is having snow in regards to orientation and mobility. Sometimes the walkways can be better defined, especially in a wide sidewalk. It's narrower and you have a route to follow. The footpaths may now lead you directly to a corner where you need to cross. Street crossing may be shorter because the street is narrower. They haven't removed all the snow from the street, and there's snowbanks on the street, which gives you a shorter distance to be in the street. The traffic sounds may be easier to hear. Traffic may be slower or less. Your audio cues on cold, crisp days may transmit better. However, there are a lot of snow impacts and barriers. You should be planning to walk through snow drifts or puddles or on ice. If you're using the grass line to follow a guideline, it may be frozen and harder to detect. Landmarks may be different or hidden. Pedestrians may be walking in the street, and you can't use them as a guideline on where you should be. Snowbanks may block sound and sight lines of you and the vehicles in the street. Traffic sounds may be muffled. Traffic may have limited ability to stop because of the snow and ice in the street. For orientation, there's a lot of orientations with winter. First of all, at a street crossing, where am I to cross? If there are snowbanks all over the place, there may not be a good defined route on if positioning yourself to cross. Understand that the footpath may not lead to the correct street crossing. You may find an opening, but it may not be directing you into the right area that you want to go. Secondary plowing may block curb cut access. The photograph on the left is of a woman in a crosswalk. There is a secondary snow pile there that a snowplow must have come through. There is a small footpath that you have to climb through, and then you will end up on the sidewalk, which is cleared. So the environment is going to be always changing for you. You need to be aware of that. In this photograph, the walk signal button is totally surrounded by about 4 feet of snow completely around it. It's definitely not wheelchair accessible, and you would have to lend and reach to push the button and then reposition yours to get the correct crosswalk that you need to cross. This is one thing that if you're to reminding them that people do use these signals and they need to be cleared. Be aware that crossings may be different on each. Photographs I took are from made connecting to the crosswalk, but across from that, the snowbank, there was a path cleared that would get me straight to the sidewalk. And then again, I'm looking from a different direction. The snowbank is clear. I can have the walkway is clear to the crosswalk, but crossing to the next across the street on the corner, I have to go around a routes around transit stations change as well. This is a photograph at Sullivan Station coming from a walkway that crosses through from the main sidewalk through a parking lot into the transit station. And at the crossing the busway, that area is never cleared very well as the entire other part of the crosswalk is, because I'm assuming they have to manually shovel and the snowplow can't get through it. So it is not always cleared very well. One thing for the 2014 and 2015, we had snowbanks that were 6 feet, 5 feet high. This is a photograph of a very narrow sidewalk with very high snowbanks, and they're face high. You need to be aware of overhead hazards with these type of snowbanks. The sidewalks will be narrower, and you will probably have no landmarks that you normally would use that you could use during your route. And you may not be able to locate the street crossing as easily as you have done in the past. Some paths may not be well defined. These two photographs are of a sidewalk on the left that has a little bit of snow clearance, but it ends in a snowbank further up on the sidewalk. And the one on the right has a somewhat of a path with two extremely high snowbanks on either side of them. So it's not, there's a walking path through, other pedestrians have walked it through. So you may have to be exploring and locating where these paths might be. One thing to be aware of, we have a lot of people that keep close to the building line for traveling. In snow and ice conditions, you may want to be more on the sidewalk side of the street or the curb side because there's ice and snow falling from the roofs. And of course, they put little A-frame signs out telling sighted pedestrians to be aware. It's not very helpful to the individuals I work with. So you being proactive is staying away from the building line during any time long-term snow events. Other issues that you may have to encounter is, this is a photograph of, there is no sidewalk available and everybody has to walk in the street. So there may be situations you may have to be walking in the street as there is no pedestrian access to the sidewalk. We're going to get into advocacy and how do we make the pedestrian environment a bit better for us. There's a photograph of a road that's plowed in a nice winter covered scene. And roads and sidewalks are public right-of-ways. However, they're treated differently. Roads are plowed more than once. They're resanded and de-iced as needed. And what about the sidewalks? We know that does not happen. So under ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, state and local governments are required to make their programs accessible. Sidewalks, streets, and intersections, i.e. pedestrian access, are government programs. Individuals need to contact their DPW or city or town officials and start having a conversation about sidewalk snow removal policies. Cities and towns should identify a municipal point person who deals with snow removal issues. What is the reporting procedure in your city or town? Many big cities have 311, you or send an email. You want them to set priorities for sidewalk snow clearance. You want them to monitor and policies, and you want to train municipal and private snow plowing personnel on how to clear curb cuts and keep access available. So you need to advocate for sidewalks removal. Individuals in the communities, they're living it up to their town officials, the need. Walk Boston is an organization that has made a number of recommendations to bring these to these cities and towns. One is highlight the curb cuts. Municipalities should clear curb ramps shortly after or at the same time as street plowing. Driveways, snow needs to be removed from blocking sidewalks. Sidewalks, is you want to be clearing off a sidewalk, and that includes ice and snow. It should be a clearance of 48 inches wide or 75% of the width of a sidewalk. Sanding and de-icing also should occur on a regular basis. There should be a first priority list of sidewalks, with the first priority being passable within 3 to 6 hours after a snowstorm that occurs during 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Snow removal, this is a photograph of a driveway that has been cleared on the right, and on the sidewalk there is a mound of snow, which is from the plowing of the driveway. Now, most of the sidewalk is cleared around because there's been a lot of melting, and probably this storm maybe weeks ago, and it was a heavy snowstorm. So the snow drifts from the plows never melt very quickly. So this is a problem that cities and towns need to be made aware of, that they need to clear these mounds of snow off the sidewalk. So I don't want to scare you about not going out in the winter, and hopefully this presentation hasn't done that. It just wants you to be aware. If you dress for the weather, you travel in most situations. You need to understand your orientation and mobility skills, your balance skills, and you don't want the winter season to scare you not to go outside. There's different activities you can get involved in to continue to go outside and feel more confident traveling. Some of those are, as I mentioned before, is snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, hiking, even in the snow, walking, taking your walks every day, and practicing balance activities if you have balance issues. The more you're outdoors, the better you can judge the different types of weather with what you need to wear, and know that weather changes, but you can adapt to it and continue traveling in any kind of winter weather, knowing your expectations of orientation and mobility. I'd like to thank you for attending. I hope that this presentation has encouraged you to venture out during the winter season, using the tools that we talked about. Please send along additional mass.gov/MCB. You can leave a message for me on my voicemail at 617-626-7581 or email the commission at mcbinfo, info at mass.gov. Also get at our website the list of the future O&M presentations that we'll be having. For their help in setting up this presentation and giving me all their tips of the trade. Thank you very much.